this in your book?
Oh, man. Well, the cover image of the book is a double bow knot drawing of a coverlet. That's sort of one of the icons patterns of the book. It's not a quilt, it's a woven coverlet. And this is a graph drawing pattern that I was using a lot of the words, the names for these coverlets that were sort of recovered in Western North Carolina as part of the Western craft revival movement. And there's a lot about naming in this book. So there's a fetish about these names of these different kind of coverlets. You know, there's all these different names for the same pattern. Like muscadine hulls is also another name of this same pattern. And they were collected by Frances Louisa Goodrich, who was the great granddaughter of Noah Webster. You know, so she was already a cataloger, and so that's one of the tropes that kind of comes back. You know?
What can you give us an overview of the book? And it's about the Appalachian region, right? Ish.
Yes, it's part of a larger project called NC Ode, or North Carolina Ode, or In Code is another play on that word, and this is the first book-length section of this longer project. And the second section is Crowns of Charlotte, which is about the Piedmont in my hometown of Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm mostly going to talk about this book today. And it's in the Laurels. Cott alludes to, you know, the Laurels, of course, the Laurel country down there, they call rhododendron laurels because it's so tangled. They called it Laurel Hells. It was like hell to get out of. You couldn't escape. If you were hiking up in the mountains back in the pioneer days, you would just be caught there forever, and a lot of people perished, you know, just getting tangled in these laurel hells. And I was thinking of it as the South, you know, like sort of like, how do I going to deal with my love-hate relationship with the South? I moved up to New York to find the artists, but I felt this pull, and as I approached middle life and having a child, to like, what do I really want? The inheritance thing came into play. What is the idea of home and origin? And what is my relationship to the South? So I thought I should do a case study of my home state. And there were, of course, a lot of great models for that I was thinking of, like Charles Olson doing the Maximus poems about Gloucester, and Eleni Siciliano's doing her California poem, and just a lot of amazing work in that area. Like Ed Sanders doing what he called the saturation job on a certain subject, where you would obsessively catalog things and then write out of that. There's also values. You know, I have values to do with form. So I was searching for a form. So I was trying to figure out how to write about something and trying to find the form to do that in. And I was hoping to come across some wonderful, you know, stanza that would unfurl like some kind of terza rima or some kind of quatrain that would be like this great ode. But I couldn't arrive at that. I was still casting about for these various forms. And I realized as I was writing notes for this, that one way to think about the book is the form I arrived at is there's a lot of various poetic forms across the top of the page. Some are like in stanzas, some are free verse, some are found poetry, some are a lot of collage and pastiche, overheard poetry framed as a poem. But then along the bottom of the page, there's this river poem that manifested. I call it River Codex. And so it's almost like the landscape of this Appalachian place where I go near Asheville. It's Marshall, Madison County. There's a river that runs below the mountains, and we're up on the mountains, and the mountains are like the poems looking down, and like there's lots of different ridges. They all look different, you know, all these different poem forms. It's almost like the Blue Ridge manifesting in the book. I was like, oh, okay, that's the form. But you know, basically I think of an ode as a love poem, and there's definitely a part of this, you know, like I said, the ambivalence about how to praise something you're not quite sure of, and like, why did I leave, you know, why do I feel like I want to come back? And every time when I go to North Carolina and I say, I'm just going to write about North Carolina, then I start having these dreams about New York City, like, and all the people that I ever met here come into my dreams. And how do I deal with all these, you know, different, you know, subject matters, right? What else do I want to say? Just, it's also about the Laurels as also a metaphor, like, you know, for Brer Rabbit saying, like, you know, please don't throw me back in the briar patch. I was like, you know, I don't want to go back there, but then you do, like, you want to get reattached to that culture and that grounding.
Did you feel like through the act of writing the book, you arrived somewhere at like some other kind of understanding, or?
Yeah, I think yeah, it's definitely a ritual motion that I've been through, and I feel like more at peace with it in a way. Like I feel like I've written a book that I hope people in New York will like, because I have these dichotomies, I guess, too much, but like that has interesting avant-garde techniques and like, you know, beautiful language play, which of course is Southern as well, but like that some of them are very humorous and straightforward in a certain way that I didn't do in the past, that I was hoping that my Southern family would enjoy and that they would get. You know, it's like, not to be too dichotomous about that, but like one of my favorite stories is when I was going down there just this summer, this woman said she just like said she was reading it while she was getting a pedicure, and she was just laughing. And I'm just like, I love that image of this Southern lady reading my poetry book. It never occurred to me before that would happen. You know, so, I don't know. There's a certain kind of acceptance that was very gratifying. But I don't know, making peace with that. There's a lot of shadow texts, aspirations I was dealing with as I went through it. Like Joe Brainerd's I Remember. I was really trying to figure out how to write about my life, how to write about autobiography that's not just about me, like how to make a larger form. Adrienne Kennedy's book, People Who Led to My Plays, was very inspiring to me, with different people in her life and how they made her who she was.
I have one other question
please.
for you. Like with, you're from that area, so the language that you use in the book, it's not something that you had to, say, research and catalog and contend with that way?
It's an interesting case, because I'm from Charlotte, which is in the middle of the state, sort of the big city, and this is like the mountains are like this, to me, they represent this magical hideout place I used to go in my childhood. For a few weeks out of the summer, we'd go to, you know, church camp, or like, you know, Montreat, this place near Black Mountain College, and you only get to go for a few weeks out of the summer, and it was like this sort of magical nature place to go. And so when I was older, my husband and I got a little cabin there to hide out, you know, and it was actually after 9/11 happened too. I was in bed, sort of paralyzed with some kind of nerve thing about being stressed out about 9/11, and I'd read Prodigal Summer by Barbara Kingsolver, and I was like, I've got to go to the mountains. I've just got to go. But I couldn't totally divorce myself from my beloved New York City, and I didn't want to. But so I sort of started this double life, you know.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Would you read? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. It's just not my you know, it's you know, when I go up to the mountains, I'm also writing as an outsider, because I know the mountains very well, but it's a different part of the mountains. And this is the place where, you know, they say if a cat has a kitten in the oven, you don't call them biscuits. You know, it's like it's like these kind of sayings. It's like, you know, there's these people, artists that have moved there in the 60s, and they moved there in their 20s and 30s to get away and go up into the mountains, and they still are known as newcomers. You know, it's like, so like I'm like from away. You know, so it's like this weird doubleness of being from there and very familiar, but it's also totally an outsider. So anyway.
And so did you mine outside resources and things?
There's a lot of research that I wrote from, and I originally was going to write sort of poetry and then prose essays back and forth, but they ended up being all woven into the poetry.
Right. Would you read a couple
Sure.
poems?
I'd love to. Well, here's one of the earliest pieces I wrote in the book, called Double Southern Register. Here in the Appalachians, the phrase, "I don't care," gives consent. Form follows function. Form mirrors function. The Mace family chair is said to make the sitter, quote, "forget about chairs," meaning chairs are ruined for you. Once you've sat in one, you can sit in no other. Up north, it's forget about it. Forget about it. After tasting tomatoes picked fresh from a garden, I once wrote, "Tomatoes like warm, bleeding hearts, and could eat no other after that. Ghost-like grocery store hothouse varietals did nothing for me. But songs are made from a rarefied material. Language gives them a different nature, an antique that cannot be constrained, stroked, or sold. A coverlet that will not rot nor unravel." Actually, I could read the very last poem in the book just to go to one of the short coverlet poems. There's a longer coverlet poem you can look at that would take a long time to read. But where is it? Okay, coverlet. I'm glad for worship houses people build around the world, but the garden is my church, the woods my sanctuary. To do a little dance on a screened-in porch while no one is looking in my own dimension. Each find her own motif a shady place, ants filter in timed array, a start and stop coverlet.
Beautiful.
And what else do I want to read? There's so many. This is a kind of a strange one I haven't read out loud yet. It's was one of the last ones I added to the book when I was talking about that dream life that kept erupting and trying to figure out what to do with that, saying, well, what about me? All these like nighttime messages, like all this sort of excess that comes up. So it's called Brown's Dream, which is also the name of an old-time song. There's a lot of double meanings in a lot of these languages. I mean, like these terms, like let me just tell you one moment that was just, it's in here, of I was watching a square dance kind of set of 4 couples doing a square dance. There was a quilt pattern on the wall of this stage, and then they were playing this Appalachian music, and it was all going around, and it all became this synesthetic experience. It was like it all sort of came together. It's like the folk culture there is like the most wild avant-garde, hallucinogenic stuff. It's just like all sort of comes back around the other side. Like, have you ever seen Harry Smith's Smithsonian Poetry Anthology? The folk song anthology. And it alludes to that revolution in the 60s when everybody was listening to that, this folk music from the past and then making it anew. So that all these ballad singers up there in the mountains and musicians that have this amazing culture that's sort of revolving around still. But this is called Brown's Dream. Just now, there were these women or people telling me about the habit of bees to be collected. They were amassing around some flower, and you must let them go afterwards to find their hive or queen. We are on the very mountaintop, and I'm afraid that they, too, are too far from the queen to reunite. They're in a cup or stocking with their stingers sticking through the mesh. They must be released. The sooner the better, or their powers will amass to sting, breaking out of the container. What does this have to do with the new kitten who wants affection so strongly she breaks down the door to get to us? I woke with the phrase, a habit like kissing, or was it a habit such as kissing, which turned into the kissing custom? What does this have to do with the yellow jacket nest I asked Michael Red Fox to destroy tomorrow, or the artwork of the Beehive Collective I just received in P.O. Box 13? What is the form of writing down a dream? Should this dream be in line breaks? I must say it was extraordinary finding Alyssa talking about eating apples and honey and the different ways sweetness comes into them before our drive home, and the poet as ecstatic. I said that poetry could go anywhere, do anything, even practice law. She then said, I am glad that is your mission. Dreams continue into the day, seeing that miniature owl on the way home flash its round golden eyes up at us from the road. Good thing I was going slow, and then it flying and landing on a branch almost made up for the horrible thing that happened to the box turtle, whose shell could not protect her from the wheel of a car on the road before us. I am sorry to report that turtle meat is red. Sorry, it's not a good way to end. But let me just say one of the main aspects of the book is just seeing signs as poetry, and I'll just leave you with a 3-word poem. There was actually on a sign I saw driving down the road in Madison County. It just said, Angel Food Suspended.
Thank you.